when we move into an animation there, so we have now the head, as we see here, is the hydrophilic, and the tail is the hydrophobic. So hydrophobic. This is the way that usually they assemble naturally. They have the tail in the oil and the head in the water. Now, the problem here is the steel, or the nice thing is the steel is charged. As we saw when we discussed the Helmholtz double layer, we have the steel basically charged. They have a charge, usually a negative charge. As we see here, these guys, they have a positive charge with this nitrogen element there. So the steel has a negative charge. So there is an interactive attraction. These guys, they're being attracted by the steel, so these guys, they will start to go to the steel surface. At some point, the concentration of the inhibitor is so high that they start to do this type of agglomeration that are called micelles. So they start to micelle. And they micelle differently when they are in water than when they are in oil. When they are in water, they micelle with the tails in the center because they don't like water. So they need to group together and repel water, so they micelle, they form micelles like that. When they are in the oil, the heads, they don't like oil, they like water. So they stay together and they basically micelle in that way. When they increase the micelle concentration, now they have a more stronger attraction to the steel surface. And in this way, the water is basically repelled from the steel surface, and then we reduce corrosion rate by reducing the concentration of water. This is one treatment that is usually called continuous treatment. So we always have corrosion inhibitor in the solution, and then this is basically protecting the steel. But there is another treatment that they call batch treatment, and this is the way that it's applied. They put a chemical batch treatment. Usually, the chemical that they utilize in this treatment is oil soluble. So they put the pile of liquid and they just basically put it in between two filming scrapers to move the liquid and to paint. This is some sort of painting the surface of the steel. They need to do and practice this treatment every 2 months or depending the corrosivity. But once they film, because they have a very strong interaction in between the chemistry, the chemical and the steel surface in the oil soluble, then they last for longer and then they can reduce corrosion rate. However, this type of application could be detrimental if we are not applying the inhibitor film constantly in a regular basis. So the continuous treatment is basically a system which contains solvents, surfactants, and emulsifiers. As I explained, I talk about the surfactants. Can be used in combination with other type of elements like oxygen scavengers. We talk about the scavengers, or scale inhibitors, that basically chemicals that reduce the scale tendency. There must always be a certain amount of free inhibitor in solution. So it's the residual. As we explained in the animation, it should be always a concentration of inhibitor to improve the performance by the micellization. And it's always important to have a residual to monitor the consumption of the corrosion inhibitors. And then even the best chemistry is worthless if used in the ground system or misplaced. For example, environments where you have oxygen or constant ingress of oxygen, scavengers or not scavenger, but surfactants doesn't have the tendency to work, and it's basically kill the oxygen. Is poison the molecules and the effect of the film.